Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to move past subconscious blocks and negative patterns that are holding you back, then do we have the Healing Stories show for you. Today I'll be talking with Rebecca Thompson Hitt, the author of 3 books on conscious parenting, the founder of the Consciously Parenting newsletter, and a pioneer behind Healing Stories, which are for everyone. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about how healing stories can help us get at our traumas, uncover hidden patterns, and help us heal our original wounds. That plus we'll talk about the dysregulation in flying boots, the dreaded word chair, farms in rural Mexico, breathing deep and fights in the back seat, and what in the world nursing a baby sheep has to do with anything. Gotcha. So welcome to the show, Rebecca. Are you ready to shine?
I am. Thank you so much, Michael.
Well, thank you so much too, and a mighty woohoo!
Woohoo!
Awesome. So before we dive right into things, I guess I've got to ask, what does nursing a baby sheep have to do with anything?
That's a great question to get started with. You know, we are living in Mexico. I'm actually from Florida and been living there for a long time. And we had the opportunity to come live on a farm in rural Mexico. And so my husband and I were very excited about this opportunity. We've never lived on a farm. And one of the jobs once we got here, they said, oh, by the way, you need to bottle feed this baby sheep.
Aww.
What? Wait, what happened to its mama? You know, all the questions started coming, and they said, well, the mama had 2 baby sheep and only nursed 1. And so we've been bottle feeding the sheep. So we're leaving. So here's the bottle. Here's the powder. Good luck. You just need to go feed the baby sheep. And so every weekend morning, during the week, my husband pretty much did it every day. He would mix up the bottle like a dutiful dad, and he would head down to the barn and feed this baby sheep. And the baby sheep would be so excited to see him coming. It would be like jumping up and down, and he would get in there and, like, where's the bottle? Where's the bottle? Where's the bottle? Just adorable. And my husband, when it came time to actually wean the baby sheep, he was just devastated. He was thinking, my husband loves music, so he goes down to the animals and does animal enrichment time with the music. He puts on different music and plays it for them. Nice. And so he was trying to come up with the best like weaning music so that he could go down. He put so much thought into it. And as I was watching him, I just kept thinking, I wonder what it was like when he was weaned. I wonder what happened when he was little. And so it's not like that's a surprise for my husband that I would be pondering such things. So he just kind of turned to me. He's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know, but it probably was bad. This is what he said. But we just watched and we just took that as an opportunity to just be curious. Even if we don't know, even if we don't have an answer for it, it's wow, I'm watching you have a really hard time weaning this baby sheep. So what is your story? What's the story in your body about your own weaning and just being curious? And so I wrote a blog post on it. So
awesome. And it really will segue nicely to healing stories. I'm thinking though, just one day, I was a bicycle racer. I was in Wisconsin for this big racing series. People were vying for us, for the racers, to stay at their house overnight. And I stayed on this farm. There was a dairy farm. And I got to bottle feed one of the baby calves. And it was, oh my God, such like a religious experience. So I can't even imagine the attachment issues your husband must have now.
Right, exactly. Poor guy. He may need some healing stories to help him go through it.
So is this sheep, I'm almost afraid to ask, is this sheep going to be used for its wool or something? It's going to have a good long life?
So unfortunately, the baby sheep passed. So I know. It was so sad. It got very sick. And we called the vet, and we had just all these things to try to help it. We brought it up the house. We wrapped it in blankets. We were dropper feeding it, but it didn't make it. So it was so sad. Oh. So then we all really did need healing stories. We really did.
Okay, so let's round the corner. We're going to come to healing stories. However, to add to this, what was your early childhood like growing up?
So one of the things that I as I've started to look at these early patterns or early experiences, one of the things that came up very first for me was that I was born a C-section, and I was an emergency C-section. And so I wondered, well, what does that mean? You know, there's always so much about, oh, C-section, it's, you know, oh, that's bad. You know, you don't want to be a C-section. And I had a home birth with one of my sons. So I'm very much naturally minded. So I kept wondering, well, what is the impact of that? And everything that I kept hearing was negative. And as I started exploring this, I actually realized that it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. It's all just part of my early experience. It's part of how I came into the world. And one of the benefits of that for me is that I process information very quickly. And as someone coming into the world very quickly, you have to adjust. All of a sudden, you know, you go from inside to outside in 2 minutes. And so now, you know, we've gone from inside where it's dark and it's loud, but different kind of loud, to out where it's cold, and now you're adjusting to temperature on the body. All these things require you to adjust very quickly. And so in my work, where I'm listening to people's stories and I'm looking at the whole of someone's early experiences, I can look at all of it and take it in and say, wow, I can see the patterns. I can see the patterns. So my early experiences, just in terms of imprint, I just am fascinated by. I grew up in a family where there was quite a bit of chaos. My mom did really the best that she could. She came from a really chaotic background herself, and my parents were kind of opposite. So my mom was and is more on the abstract random, you know, not necessarily planning. Dinner was kind of a surprise, generally speaking. And my dad is an engineer. And so everything is structured, everything is planned. And so I grew up right in the middle of that. And, you know, I think a lot of the experiences that I had were very much about just the way that we in our society grow up, parent, experience discipline, and how we navigate those things when we do something that we're not supposed to. What happens? And in the era that I was growing up, it was very much about, you know, okay, consequences, and, you know, okay, we need to do something, and we need to do something to make you suffer in some way,
so that you'll fall in line.
Yes, so you'll fall in line and you won't do that again. And one of the biggest pieces that I as I grew up and started studying it was that I realized you're missing that emotional piece, that we're not just a human doing, that we're a human being, and we have this whole emotional experience. And so why do we do those things? And how can we change the pattern without inflicting outside pain, so that we can make that shift for ourselves? How can we understand our behavior and the needs that are happening for us and in our families? So it sent me on a journey to really discover all of that and figure that out.
I love it. I used to coach kids kids and adults, but a lot kids with attention deficit disorder. I'll put that in quotes. We won't even go there. But
Right.
but and I was considered a poster child growing up, and we may get to that. But with that said, whenever the parents would take me aside, I would say one thing over and over again, above and beyond all else. And I hadn't read your beautiful book. I didn't know this wisdom existed. I would say, I don't care what the behavior is. I don't care what they're doing or not doing. Protect the relationship, protect the relationship, protect the relationship. Because at the end of the day, that was like my whole speech. It wasn't often what parents wanted to hear, but they would, on their heart level, they would get it. Nobody would say, no, I don't want to protect my relationship.
Right. But how we do that is a whole other question.
It's a huge question. So, and we'll only touch on that real briefly today, but I guess you were seeing something was off maybe when you first got to college and you're studying psychology?
I think probably when I was in high school and I was experiencing some of these things. You mentioned chair. That's in
Oh gosh,
my
yes.
book.
What was
And
chair?
so chair was basically time out for big kids. And so I remember, and we went to a psychologist, supposed to be very good in the state, family counseling. So we're all sitting around, and basically it wasn't any kind of family counseling that I would ever do, but it was the counseling of the time. And it was, okay, parents, you got to pull it together. And, if there's any sort of, kind of moving away from the agenda or what you want your kids to be doing, then you just need to put them on chair. And I remember I was a pretty quiet kid, and I didn't really rock the boat. That'd be my brother, my younger brother, who, jumped out of the bedroom window off the second floor to go out and who knows what in the middle of the night with his friends. I wasn't that kid. I wasn't that kid at all. And I remember I really struggled to speak my mind. And chair was like the worst thing you could have done for me, because I would be trying to speak and say, but I did make my bed. And I would get put on chair. And anytime I would start to say anything else, it would be, we'll make it longer. So we would be sitting in the middle of the house. It was kind of a humiliating experience. And we weren't allowed to speak. We just had to stare straight ahead until they decided we could get up. And this was the advice of the time. This was the best we could do. And what it did to my relationship, how I felt about my parents at that point, was not the way that we want our kids to feel about their parents. And they were doing the best they could. They were trying. These were people who were really trying to make this better, because it was chaotic. It wasn't working. And so when I went to college, I started studying it. And that was they brought the puppies in to the developmental psychology class, and there they are, okay, make the dog do something. And so there we are, okay, so reward and punishment and that was it. And we're supposed to apply this directly to our classrooms as a classroom teacher. And I just thought, we're missing something. We're missing something really important here, because children are not puppies, which was really radical at the time.
And I would even argue that we can actually do much better with puppies as well.
I think so. Absolutely.
You just gave me flashbacks. I went to counselor after counselor after counselor. And I love you, Mom. I love you. Probably don't want to listen to this show today. But what would happen is the counselor would see me for quite a while and then would say, well, you're all right. They would call the parents in and say, this obviously goes beyond the child, and he'd get fired, or she, and they'd be on to the next one. And I remember at 13, I didn't get chair, but I wanted to buy a bicycle, and I had been working full time for at least a good year. I lied about my age since I was 12 so I could get out of the house. And I had my own money, and I rode 20 miles to see the psychiatrist. And he negotiated with my parents a behavior contract. And I had to meet all of the things on the contract. And that contract was for lack of another term, the bane of my existence. That I have to negotiate away my ability to be me, so that it's just wrong.
Yeah, right. I know. It's we're missing this person who is here and who maybe needs some support, but, doesn't necessarily need, here's this list here, because you can't get it together yourself. So here you go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's breathe deep. Let's talk about briefly what you learned in college, and then we're going to switch gears and talk about this amazing modality you have, and we may use me as a guinea pig as well. Okay.
Yeah. So I went to I was a classroom teacher for a couple of years, and decided that really was not my path, and so I went back to school and started studying marriage and family therapy. And within a really short period of time, I found attachment research, which was all about the relationship. It was all about, I know, oh my God, where have these people been? Why haven't we heard about these people? And then it's been around since the 40s. It's not new. And that just blew my mind. And then I found the research on trauma and how you can heal trauma through relationship. And how when you've got a veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, the relationship, having someone that they can turn to and talk to, is what makes the difference between having flashbacks and horrible symptoms and not. And I just thought, why are we not talking about this in parenting? Why are we not talking about the relationship and the importance of the relationship? Why are we not talking about that? And so I've spent the last 20 years studying attachment and trauma and the relationship and how do we heal it? How do we reconnect with ourselves if we've disconnected from ourselves at any point along the way? And then how do we connect with one another so that we can heal and, connect deeply? Because that's really what it's all about.
Beautiful. Would you mind sharing? You don't have to if you don't want to, but after you've had your first child, what happened in 2002? Because this was, I have to believe, such a huge, and I won't even go there, but just such a huge learning for you.
Yes, absolutely. So I had my first child, and I'd been practicing a lot of the attachment type things I'd been learning, and we were really pretty connected. And then I became pregnant with another baby, a baby boy, and at birth he died. He had anencephaly, which is a neural tube defect, and we knew right before he was born that this was going to happen, and we did the best that we could to try to prepare ourselves and to prepare my son, who was almost 4 at the time. And yet I didn't really understand the impact that would have on me and my ability to be present with this child who I've been so connected with. Mm-hmm. And it took me years, because what happened was that this child, and it's my oldest, and he's 18 now, and he was always a pretty intense kid, but we were always really connected. But after his brother died, there was an intensity in his behavior, and he was really needing my attention. He was really needing me to connect with him and understand what this was like for him. Mm-hmm. But I was so in my own experience that I wasn't with him. And so his behaviors escalated, and they kept getting bigger and louder. And I started doing all the things that I had grown up experiencing. Okay, you're going in timeout, which totally didn't work with him. Okay, I'm going to put you in your room. And there was a moment of actually trying to put him into his room. And I looked down into his little eyes, and he was staring up, and he was scared. I could see this little one was scared. And that was the moment that I said, oh my God, I need to do something different, mm-hmm. but I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, this is my toolkit. My toolkit is, okay, I'm going to raise my voice, and I'm going to, maybe threaten to hit you, or I'm going to try to put you in your room, or I'm going to isolate you in some way, or I'm going to take your TV away. Like this is my tools, and nothing was working. Nothing was working. And it took me a couple of years before I found some people who actually could support me in, relationship. You need to reconnect. You need to understand his story. You need to understand I need to connect with my own experience that I had, and connect with my own feelings, and connect with all of that. And then I need to create this space to connect with his and his feelings about that experience. And doing that healed our relationship, and it changed his behavior dramatically. It's like, so it's not about which consequence that I give him, or which punishment, or, what I take away. It's not about that at all. It's recognizing that he has a need. And his need was to connect with me, and I wasn't connecting. And when I connected with him and understood his story, the behaviors went away.
Wow. So what is, in general, what's a healing story? And then we'll talk about maybe what the original healing story is we get to work on. But what's a healing story?
Yeah. So a healing story, one of the things that I learned about trauma pretty early on is that it's really easy to just be re-traumatized. So lots and lots of therapies, and maybe you've experienced some of them too. You know, the experience is, okay, well, let's retell the story, let's do it, and so there you are, and you're drudging up all of this stuff, and now you feel worse than before. Yeah, I went through that a little bit. And one of the things that I learned from Ray Castellino, who's one of my mentors, amazing, amazing man who's done an amazing amount of work in this area, is the importance of slowing down. That we often will speed through everything, and then we miss the opportunity for integration. And integration is connecting your thoughts and your feelings and your body.
Ooh.
And when we are retelling the story about whatever happened, we're trying to speed through it because we don't want to feel it. We don't want to feel the pain of losing a baby. We don't want to feel the pain of whatever it is that we experienced. And so we rush through it, and we're likely to just re-traumatize ourselves. And so the idea of healing stories is slowing down. And it's slowing down, like, as Americans, we slow down and we're like, okay, yeah, I slowed down. Yeah, okay.
How long do you need me to slow down for? Am I good now?
Yeah, okay, good. Is that, yep. All right, okay, gotta go. And it's slowing down, and then slowing down like 10 times more than you think I'm talking about when you're slowing down. And one of the other elements that Ray really taught me, and I had the experience of actually in retelling my own story of the birth of my baby who passed, was having 2 layers of support. So this experience of having not just one other person listening, but 2 people who are there to hold the space, to help keep it slow and connected. And the deepest healing work that I've ever done was in that space. And I've done a lot. I have done, yeah, you pretty much name it, I've probably tried it. So, but that level of slowing down. So healing stories incorporate elements of those things. And depending upon what we have available, sometimes we can't have 2 layers of support. Sometimes we have 1. But it's still the idea of slowing down to create the space for a person, an adult or a child, to have that experience of connecting the thoughts, the feelings, and the body sensations.
Can we do this with, if they're open to it, with a spouse?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So let's talk about birth stories. What do they mean? How do we see them? I spoke with you when we're talking with Jessica about having you on for our Inspire Nation Baby show. And as soon as I got off the line with you, I was coaching, and I couldn't help but starting to see some really intriguing patterns. I'm going, oh, crap, I'm seeing things already.
And you can't unsee them.
Yeah. What's going on here?
So Ray, this is also Ray's work. Ray Castellino talks about when we experience something for the very first time, it creates an imprint in our nervous system. So we may not be able to consciously remember the experience, but our body remembers the experience. Ray talks about how when he was being born, there was he calls it the sharp left turn. And so he started noticing when he was in his car and he would go to make a U-turn, he would always do the left turn like really hard. He's like, oh my God, it's my imprint. I keep working on it, but there it is. So these patterns show up in our transitions. You can find information out if you ask your parents, when did you learn to walk? And how did you go about learning to walk? When did you learn to talk? So those milestones give us information about the way that we took in that imprint, those early experiences. And by that, I mean conception. There's an imprint at conception. There is an imprint at implantation. There is an imprint with anything big that happens during pregnancy. And there's an imprint at birth.
What is the difference between conception and implantation?
So conception, when the egg and the sperm come together, creates an imprint in the nervous system. And then implantation, and discovery, I forgot discovery. So when the cells actually land where they will be, and then discovery of the parent, there's another imprint, I forgot that one. So when the parents discover that, oh, you're there is an imprint on that as well. So welcome and worthy, do you feel welcome when you're, see?
So if a dad, for instance, is told by his wife or partner we're pregnant, and he goes, oh crap, that's like the worst thing that he could do.
Well, not necessarily, because that may be the authentic oh crap reaction. So it's not about inauthenticity. We want babies to be welcomed. It definitely creates better outcomes. But even better, if that is the reaction, is then to create a healing story around that, so that the baby, you can just acknowledge, yeah, I was so surprised. I wasn't quite ready to be a dad yet. And then I connected with you. Woo! And so it's that story of connection. We hope the dad eventually was able to do that. And a healing story can help to help the dad to come to terms with it and whatever those feelings are. And then also then to connect with the baby. And that can be done during pregnancy. It doesn't even have to wait until the baby's born.
Cool.
Very cool.
So we can start to see. Maybe you can share with us what a transition pattern or two look like, and then I'll give you what little I know of my birthing story, and we can try to figure that out.
Okay. So I like to give the story of my two boys, because I think that it's a really good example of imprints and how those may show up. So my first son was born, he was born in the hospital, and he was induced. And after the water broke, I didn't go into labor, And so he was born in, it was 3 hours from start to finish. And that was 2 hours of pushing. So it was a very, very fast, very intense labor. My youngest son, he was born at home. I couldn't even tell you for sure exactly when the labor began. It was very slow. He was born in the middle of the night. When he was born, it was very dark, and he didn't open his eyes for about 5 hours. In stark contrast to my oldest, who, when they laid him on me, stared with these giant eyes and locked eyes with me for about an hour. So it was a big contrast between, their experience of birth and, their expression even right after. So Ray Castellino, I'd gone and done some work with him and came back, and he said, well, just, a transition out of the house is a great one to just, be curious. Because I'm like, I want to get this. I want to understand. So I said, okay, boys, we're leaving the house in 10 minutes. And I think my oldest was, he was about 8 at the time, and then my youngest was about 4. And so I kind of stood back and, just waited and watched. I didn't give any other direction. I just said, all right, we're leaving the house. And about 8 minutes later, my oldest son, the one who was born in 3 hours, is standing by the door, tapping his foot, saying, are we going? Are we going? Can we go now? Are we ready? Can we go? And I look over at the floor, and my youngest is still in his pajamas playing Legos, and he looks up and he says, are we going somewhere? And that really is like part of how that imprint shows up. Now, we've done a lot of work on it. It's a lot better now than it was, but that's an idea. So when we transition, so you can look at this with yourself as an adult, when it's time to leave the house, what do you do? And I know we had that conversation with Jessica, and she was saying, oh, Oh, it takes him a long time to leave the house.
Well, I get to the door quickly.
Okay.
However, I don't have a laminated checklist with me. And then I'm like, wait. Well, so she's right. I will neurotically brush my teeth to protect my teeth before I get to the door. And I do wait. Oh, we're going now? Okay. And I run for the bathroom to brush my teeth. But then we get to the door and I'm like, wait, got to check this. Wait, got to check that. Get out of the house. Got to check the oven. Wait, going to go back to the check the oven. So there's clearly some work to be done here.
Well, and it's just clues. It's just clues about, that's the thing, is the entire idea of an imprint is something that we can just be curious about. Mm-hmm. And how is that, what are our patterns? How do we show up? And is there a connection that we can make to our birth story? Our birth story is the one that I tend to use the most because we all have one, and we all have a chance at finding out some information about it. Even if we don't have the conversation with our mother, mm-hmm. What are the stories that you always heard about your birth? And just be curious.
Why is it so important?
That's a great question. It is the way that we come into the world. Mm-hmm. And it is the first time that we do that. And so we repeat those patterns over and over and over again. And if it was a good pattern, awesome. If it wasn't a good pattern and we're stuck in that pattern somehow, then we continue to be stuck in that pattern until we do something different, until we heal that story in some way so that we don't need to repeat it in that way over and over and over again.
Cool. So from there, we'll take me as an example. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but I was on the phone with Mom right before we spoke here, and I was asking her to walk us through briefly, without extreme details, the birth. And she said that, first off, she said, I surprised the heck out of me. She said pregnancy was fun. She said she really enjoyed pregnancy. She said it was really easy and a beautiful time. So I thought that was cool. She earned some points for that. And she said they had been at the beach the day before I was born, and they had a bumpy car ride back, sitting in the backseat of an old Mustang. Maybe it wasn't old at the time. And she goes, that night she started to go into labor, and my dad was in boot camp. I guess I called it summer camp for the Army. And she said, I need you to stay home. I'm going into labor. And he's like, no, I need to go to sleep because I need to get a good night's rest. And that does tend to me. I got to go to sleep. So that was interesting. But she woke him up at 5 o'clock. They went to the hospital. She said birth was extremely fast, but she had a lot of back pain, not stomach pain, because I was upside down, or not up, face down instead of face up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And the doctor needed to use tongs on me to rotate me around.
Oh.
This just sounds awful.
It sounds awful.
And so I don't know if my mom held me after she got me. She was told that I was into something next to her. And the next day the doctor came in and said, so I'm guessing she wasn't doing bonding time with me, that the doctor came in and said, don't worry, he's going to be fine. It looks much worse than it is. And she goes, what do you mean? And so he showed my head or something, and I was a cone head.
Oh.
And said that would go down over time. And as people can see on YouTube, I'm not Dan Aykroyd. I'm not still a conehead.
Right.
But that was my birth story. And then the only other piece that I really got is, at the time, she said that they were told that you don't breastfeed your baby, that's bad. And so she was given an injection immediately after birth to stop her from lactating, which just blows my mind. So what can we learn from any of these pieces?
Well, and And so the one thing that I always wonder about with a forceps baby is, are there things? So, okay, so let's look at the pattern. So the beginning, the middle, and the end. So the beginning, it sounds like it was going okay. It sounds like your mom had some back labor, which is uncomfortable, especially because you were sunny side up is what it's called. I don't know if that's technical, name, but but hey, I think that's good. It sounds much better than I think it actually is.
Are we talking the sun or the moon here?
And so then they turned you and then they pulled you out, right? So
I guess
birth is a process that ideally we complete on our own. When I had my first son, one of the things that really surprised me was how active he was in the process of being born. That, I got kicked like up under my ribs as he was trying to push himself out. There's an important piece in that when we complete the cycle, when we complete all of our motions in our body that we're supposed to do. And when instead of pushing yourself out, you are pulled out, people often have trouble with the end of a transition because they didn't complete it themselves. So when you're describing the getting ready to go, you're at the door very quickly. And then you realize all the things that you didn't do. And so you backtrack. So you get to the door, but you don't complete that step right there. You stop because, wait, something else needs to happen. Something else. I need something else. So it's that pattern in your nervous system that you're repeating.
It's interesting you say nervous system because it's funny, and I feel like I've done a lot of work on myself, but I get jittery at that point.
Right.
Why am I getting jittery? I'm just driving down the street. This makes no sense. But yeah, right. I'll get jittery.
Right. And it's not about anything that's present, but it could be the space that you are in your transition and that your nervous system is responding to that and trying to finish it.
So what does that, okay, I don't know all of my transitions later in life. I know that I was told I went from crawling to running and I crawled backwards, if that means anything. I never crawled forwards.
Fascinating.
By the age of, what'd she say, at 20 months, I ran into a crib head on and cracked my head open, which I did 3 times by the age of 2. And I imagine that I started blurting out words. What does that all mean? What can we learn from this? And then how do we heal stuff like this?
Right. So let's just look at the pattern there. So you crawled backwards. That's fabulous. You never crawled forward.
Never crawled forward.
Did you have trouble reading?
Yes and no. So I was an extremely voracious early reader, but I reversed letters. They never picked up on it on dyslexia, but they would shame me and guilt me into 2nd or 3rd grade with the kindergarten paper to teach me how to write until finally, a miracle of God, my dad had been a translator during the Vietnam War and got to stay stateside translating. And he claims that was saving his life because he would type up things. And it occurred to me, typing saved my dad's life. And in 4th grade, I said, give me a typewriter.
Wow.
And this was, I'm dating myself here. We didn't have the home computers. Oh yes, this was my mom taped the keys on a manual typewriter so that I couldn't see the keys, but I memorized the keys almost instantly. And I was the only kid typing and turning in papers. And it revolutionized, went from, the occasional slow kids class and the occupational therapy to when you were typing a paper and none of the other kids were, you could write the most gibberish nonsense. You were getting an A.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
So that
You
was
found a
my
workaround.
reading story. But now I was tested for ADD. I guess the first time I was tested at 5. I didn't even know that till later on. At 7.5, they switched school systems to put me on Ritalin because at the time the school system they were at wouldn't allow it.
Wow.
I felt like school was moving way too slow for me, but I would get extremely anxious and apprehensive and lash out because I couldn't control myself, or what they said at the time, not about school, but in general, was I would have blow-ups. But then my parents were fighting like cats and dogs daily.
Right.
So anyway, we're not trying to repeat my whole story, but does that help in any way?
Well, it does. It does. I mean, part of what we're describing, what we're talking about in this story that repeats over and over and over again, is that you're dysregulated in your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go so far as to take a guess that it probably began at your birth, if not before. And so you're repeating those patterns. And as adults, we learn to compensate. Even as a 4th grader, you learn to compensate. I mean, how smart is that? A diagnosis of ADD, which, is or ADHD is a whole other thing. However, it at its roots is a dysregulation. You're dysregulated and you're unable to completely calm your nervous system. And so that's what it is. And so, yeah, you end up with, and then you add the other patterns of your parents and what you saw. I mean, these things do not exist in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It's like we have a pattern, and then all of the other things that happen go on top of that pattern. So when we can recognize, well, what was at the base of that pattern? What was that? What was that? And what was that experience like for you? Because you can have someone who has the exact same story as you, who metabolized it differently, who it shows up in their behaviors differently. And so you can't just say, well, all babies who are born with forceps look like this, and this is what happens when they grow up. It's more complicated than that. But recognizing what those patterns are that you're repeating over and over and over again, and slowing down enough that you can, instead of all of the thoughts, the feelings, and the body sensations being all squished together, it's like a knot, which is what happens like in a birth like yours. Mm-hmm. There was no, oh, this is how I'm feeling about this, and this is what mom's feeling about this, and everything was squashed together. The earlier it is, the younger you are, the more it's in a ball. So it's taking them apart and connecting the thoughts, the feelings, and they're going to be your adult thoughts now. Obviously we can't go back and figure out what your baby self was thinking. So your thoughts now, your feelings now, which are part of all those patterns that you've been experiencing, and then what your experience is in your body, in your nervous system. And so it's moving through it slowly. And you can take, and this is the beautiful thing about healing stories, you can take an experience from present time, and you can do the same thing. You can also go back and you can work on it with your birth story.
So can you give us
the same pattern?
Can you give us an example, since we're using me at the moment? And let's say, first off, I guess if you have a partner, if you have somebody in your life, there's somebody else who can probably show you your patterns even better than you can see them.
Yes.
you start to see a pattern. You realize it may be a birth story challenge. So for myself, I'm much better, but I still get real jittery before interviews. Now I'm 660 some odd interviews in. I've got this pretty good at this point. And yet I'll watch my nervous system peg into the red zone. And I'm going, really? I think you got this one dialed. You read 2 books. There's only one necessary. Actually, most people don't even read a book for the interview. You've got all your questions lined up. And you're shaking. So
Right. So a beautiful thing that you can do with your beautiful wife in this particular situation is that you can actually sit so that you are sitting across from each other and hold each other's hands. and breathe together. Slow down. And then look into each other's eyes, just very briefly. And then you can look away and then look back again. What you're doing is that you're moving into harmonic resonance. You're moving into a deep state of slowed down connection. And so then you can okay, so let's go with this one, since this is your 600 and whatever it is interview. So, and then you look into her eyes and you say, I was getting ready for my 639th interview today, and I still feel jittery. And then you take a pause, and then with a couple, you ask her to repeat back what she just heard. So the process then allows you to then hear what she's saying back, which is a reflection of what you just said. And then, so what it does, it forces you to slow down. And then you connect with what were you thinking about? So then you might share, well, I was thinking about, do I have everything? Do I know my questions? Do I, that chatter, whatever that is, but slowly. So I first found myself thinking about whether I had my questions, which is ridiculous because I've had my questions for a week. And then you take a breath. And so you continue looking into her eyes. So you're slowed down and you're in connection. And what you're doing is that you're untangling the stuff that's all stuck together. So instead of it being the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations, everything that's happening all at once, and now you're just jittery, and why am I jittery? Doesn't make any sense. You're pulling it apart in connection slowly. And in that process, sometimes you have a big aha. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid that this is going to happen. And I bet that comes up every single time. Because you slowed down enough, there's this stuff that can come up, bubble up from within you that you may not have made a connection to. So it's this healing space that you can create with your beautiful wife.
Woohoo!
And the next time that you go, and then the end. So at the end, so you tell as much as you need to, talk as long as you need to, connecting with your thoughts, your feelings, and your body sensations. And when you're feeling like you're complete, then and only then you can tell the story of the way that you want it to go.
Cool.
What I'd like to feel. But we skip over this other step a lot. What I want is a big house on a hill. I want, we skip to, and I want to feel powerful, and I want to feel whatever, like that. We skip over this other part of integration. Once we've integrated the thoughts, the feelings, and the body sensations, then there's actually space for us to claim what we want it to feel like, and in connection to announce that and to say and to experience it right there in that moment. So now you're creating a new pattern in your nervous system.
Wow. Thank you. So where do we go hunting? Because it sounds like almost all of us will have something of a birth story or an early trauma story. How do we go hunting for this? I guess that's part A. How do we go hunting for this?
So I actually don't recommend hunting.
Cool.
Because I think we could spend the rest of our lives hunting and we could miss all the rest of the amazing things that are happening. When you notice that you have a stuck point, and as I said before, if you know that there's a story and you want to do some integration work around it, you can definitely do that. And I do a lot of that work with my clients.
Well, for instance, a lot of people listen. Sorry to interrupt. A lot of people listen and write in about how they shoot themselves in the foot. They hear all of this great advice, they start to follow it, and then there comes a point where they accidentally pull out the revolver and there go the toes.
Right, right, right. And I think that we set the bar really, really, really high, and we expect that we're going to be able to like figure all this out and, you know, solve all of our problems, and then by tomorrow we should be fine. But let's go back to we're changing patterns in our nervous system. It's not something that you snap your fingers and say. So if you can integrate the experiences that you're having now in present time, if you can integrate those experiences and connect with the pattern that you want to be, as adults, it takes us longer to change those patterns in our nervous systems. We can work on imagining. There's so many great stories of athletes who, just spend time imagining their perfect game or imagining their perfect ride or imagining, right? Like the full course, whatever it is. And then they are able to do it because you're practicing it in your mind. You're creating neural pathways for it. You need to create neural pathways. When I work with a baby, I can change those patterns pretty quickly because they don't have a big, long, well-grooved neural pathway for the other way that that we as adults are being. And so it's gentle. It's being gentle. There's a process here. Awareness. Oh yeah, I'm really struggling with this. And then it takes time. And I work with parents, especially. That's most of the work that I do, but I work with people who aren't parents on occasion as well. And it's all about how can you shift those patterns in a way that's gentle. It's not about beating yourself up because, oh my God, we're so good at that. We've got well-grooved neural pathways for that. And it's like, no, be curious. Enter into whatever it is with curiosity. And then if the next time, if you do this with your beautiful wife, and then the next time you go to do a show, you just pay attention to what bubbles up. And you pay attention with just curiosity. Not, oh, it should be like this by now. Why am I still feeling this? But what am I feeling now and how has it changed? So that it creates space for that healing to happen and to breathe.
I love it. There's so many more questions I can ask on this. There's people jump on over to her website. You'll find some great blogs, lots of information. Actually, I do have a few more questions, but I might as well give the URL now. Where do people go? Yeah.
So it's consciouslyparenting.com. It's my website. Yeah. CONSCIOUSLY.
And if you didn't catch that, come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to consciouslyparenting.com as well. If people don't have a Jessica Lee in their life or a reasonable facsimile, what can they do?
So, I've had a lot of people who have done this with a friend. So it doesn't have to be a partner. It's just someone who, if you have enough information, I do have some tools on my website. I have a program called Healing Stories that will walk you through at different ages and stages. If you've got children, if you are an adult who's trying to work through some of this, and if you listen to it with someone else who can try it with you, that's great. I also offer support services. I work via Skype and Zoom for anybody in the world. So I am available as a layer of support as well to help guide that process if someone wants to do that work.
Thank you. What advice, Jessica wants me to always ask a question for parents and kids. What advice would you give parents to help their kids with healing stories?
So the biggest thing that I've discovered, and this was, I think, one of the very first times that I tried to do a healing story circle experience with a parent and their brand new baby. It was a 3-day-old baby. And I said, okay, walk them through what needed to happen, explain the process. And then I said, okay, tell your baby her story. And the parents looked at me and told me their story. we as parents need the space to experience that level of listening and healing before we can do it for our kids. And so don't think, okay, I got to hurry up and I got to do this healing story with my kid. It's really critically important that you create the space for you, whether you write your thoughts, your feelings, and your body sensations, and you use that as a process for yourself. I've had people do that as well, or you find a partner, or you work with me. Make sure that you take the time to do that, because that allows you, just like the story with my son, where I needed to tell my story. I needed to acknowledge my story before I could hear his. So healing in our families and being able to connect is about us doing our work, is about us connecting with ourselves so that we can truly connect with them.
Woohoo! I call it putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first. And our children will thank us for that in the long run, because how's it go? If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. If I took off my coaching, since you said work, if I take off my coach's hat and I give it to you right now, I want people to leave here today with one homework assignment that can help them. What would you give them today?
I would say, it's so easy to be really critical about yourself, whether you're a parent, whether you're a professional in some capacity. It's so easy to be critical. But I would ask you to find in yourself curiosity. Curiosity. Be curious about yourself rather than critical. Is, okay, what can I learn about myself here? What is this? What is it that I need? I want to be curious about that. Because when we can start looking at our needs, not our wants, it's not about, I want a cookie, I want a Starbucks. It's not about that. But when you can identify what it is that you need and be curious about that, that goes a long way. It shifts it from, oh, I got to change this, to I want to be curious about myself. And then other solutions bubble up that you couldn't see before. Curiosity.
Awesome. I love it. On that note, on the curiosity note, question we like to ask near the end: what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
It changes. It changes a lot. But when you said that, I just have to share this. So I'm learning Spanish right now. And so anytime I have a victory where I communicate successfully what it is that I need, and it's understood on the other side, is such a big thing. So on yesterday, we were walking down the hill. I'm very rural area, and it's a dirt road. And we saw some men with some burros, and they had some, something on their backs. And so my husband actually asked, was it firewood, leña? And they said yes. And so we negotiated to have uno burro of leña delivered to our casa today, which, we were like, woohoo, we did it. We could have a fire. It's cold, So it's, I think right now that's just what came into mind, but it's that learning to communicate, learning to connect, and actually being successful right now is such a big thing. Even if it's just, getting some firewood delivered by a burro, which I think is hilarious.
I think it's awesome. And I love that you're celebrating each moment, the giving the punctuation mark, which is going to help the next one come about as well.
Yes.
Which might be another burro.
It could be. No dos burros.
Before I ask any last words of wisdom, I can't help but ask, what does a baby going backwards mean?
I would just have to be really curious about that. But so what, I go into the baby, and what does it mean? So I think for you, because let's think about, just remember that you can have a pattern but it doesn't mean the same thing for every person. So I'm applying this to what I know about you and your birth. So I can imagine that as you were moving forward to be born, mm-hmm. and then it became painful, and then you stopped, that there's a part in your nervous system that didn't want to go forward because
and get my head munched.
And get your, which of course you demonstrated a couple more times after you were crawling successfully when you were bashing your head, mm-hmm. which I don't think is a coincidence either.
3 times by 2 or 2.5, I needed stitches in the head.
In the head. Because you had this in your nervous system, this idea that it needed to be painful. Moving forward needed to be painful.
Oh, God. There's a pattern. Because in my earlier years, I would want to slay the dragons. Everything had to be painful and difficult. My mantra now is, and you were talking about it earlier when it comes to healing and talking about sharing our story, is kind, gentle, easy, good. Kind, gentle. We don't need to bang our head against anything anymore.
Right. That's right. And that's part of you creating your own healing story circle around that.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. This has been phenomenal. This has been so much fun. When I asked last words of wisdom, but I often ask my guests beforehand if they'd like to do a little guided meditation at the end. I don't know that that's even your bag, but I'm hearing your voice, and it's so smooth and comforting. I wouldn't be surprised if you have that in your healing modality.
I could do, one of the things that I do a lot is helping people just to connect with themselves and connect with their bodies. So I'd be happy to do that.
Let's do that. First off, any last words of wisdom before we do a brief meditation?
This has really been fun. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun to talk about this. I think it's so important to recognize that we all have patterns that we repeat over and over. And some of them are good and we like them, and some of them aren't as good. And when we can, instead of criticizing ourselves over those patterns that we don't like in ourselves, I'm going to come back to the curiosity piece. I think it's so important for us to move through those things, not through being critical, which is what we may have seen growing up, which is what we may see in our culture around us, but in cultivating that curiosity.
Woohoo! Thank you so much. So would you have a brief exercise or meditation you wouldn't mind sharing then?
Sure. Okay, so one of the things that I talk a lot about in my work is helping people to be present in this moment and to connect with their bodies. So I just encourage you, if you're feeling comfortable to do so, you can close your eyes if you're not driving, of course, and just close your eyes and just take a moment and take a nice deep breath. And then when you take another deep breath, I want you to breathe all the way up into your head and then all the way down into your feet. Take a moment, and I want you just to focus on where you're sitting. If you are sitting, pay attention to the surface underneath you, supporting you. Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it cold? Is it warm? And then I want you to take your breath and move all the way down to your feet. And I want you just to bring your attention all the way into wherever your feet are. If they're on the floor, if they're inside your shoes or your socks, just bring attention all the way down. Wiggle your toes. And then notice if the surface under your feet is warm. Is it soft? Is it smooth? Is it rough? Just bring awareness all the way down. And then take another nice deep breath. And then allow your attention to move all the way back up past your seat and into your heart center. And just take a moment of gratitude for this moment, for this breath. And then as you're ready, you can open up your eyes. Come back to this moment, to this time, to this place. And as you open your eyes, I want you to look around the space that you're in and just find one thing in your space that brings you joy.
Woof.
Aww, perfecto. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. This has been a true pleasure, a treat. It certainly got me thinking. I think it's got a lot of us thinking today. And it's clear the work you're doing is coming so much from the heart. And I can feel it over here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. This has been an absolute pleasure for me too. I'm so glad that you're doing this work and that, whatever obstacles and blocks might come up for you before you have shown up 600 and however many times. So thank you.
Gracias.
De nada.
Crank perfecto. A correcto. E correcto. Oh boy. Forgive me, everybody. My French, my poor French is coming out. All right. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, check out consciouslyparenting.com and discover your own birth story and shine bright. Woohoo! Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This is so beautiful.
As you process your own birth, let me know what comes up.
That'll be interesting. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And then to see what unravels itself. Just as you create your own connections, you go, oh. And then, like I had a mom who, I didn't think to say this, but she was experiencing vertigo herself as an adult. And so we started working on her early pattern of her mom being really sick during her pregnancy. And then all of a sudden she could read in a vehicle, and she'd never been able to do that. So things that are unrelated seemingly will go away, and you'll go, oh, wait, I didn't know that was connected.
Awesome. Enjoy the un burro of wood to keep your house warm.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, Rebecca. You're shining so bright.
Mwah.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!